Hey, welcome to Cardboard in the Rough. I'm Justin, and today I'm going to teach you how to play Everdell Duo. This is a two-player implementation of the game Everdell. In both games, you will be playing as the mayor of a really adorable woodland city, building buildings and recruiting critters, trying to build the best city possible. So I've started setting up, and I'm going to walk you through the rest of the setup in a moment, but I wanted to give you a heads up about this because it's a little strange, I guess. There are several different modes of play. I'm going to describe how to play based on the competitive mode, where two players go head to head, and then I will go into some of the other modes after that, and I'll leave timestamps down below for those. So, as far as setup goes, get your board, and it is two-sided. For competitive, you're going to want to use the one that says Journey in the upper right, like that. And build yourself a bank of tokens. And you will need to place the sun and moon on the left side, right here. Go ahead and shuffle these river tiles and draw two of them. They go right here. Shuffle together all of the critters and constructions, which are, they all have backs like this. You're going to deal them out starting at the top left, one in each space in the meadow. You'll take the 4 season tiles, make sure that they are on the side that does not show the skunk, and you're going to place them in order, starting with winter, then spring, then summer, then autumn. This part of setup, you'll want to take these tiles, they're event tiles, and take out 2 of them. There's one called the Journey, it's going to go right there, and one that's called the Fair. It has the same back as the others. Set those aside. And then the rest of these, they are labeled in the lower left. It's a bit of an unwieldy stack of tiles, but you're going to take them, and so in the lower left here, they're lettered A through E. Separate them out into their stacks so that you have A, B, C, and D. Then what you're going to do, you're going to take from each stack a single tile. So shuffle them up, get a single tile from each stack. Take your smaller stack of one with each letter, add the Fair to it, shuffle these up, and then you're going to put them left to right, going across the top here at each of these event spaces. Okay? So you give each player 3 workers and a reference card. You will want to put this deck within reach of both players, and both players do get 1 card. Oh, you can't see that, sorry, there you go. Both players get 2 cards from the deck. That becomes their hand. Now you are set up and ready to go. So you'll play over 4 seasons: winter, spring, summer, and autumn. And at the end of autumn, whoever has the most points wins. So how do you get points? Well, there are 4 different places that points come from. One is from cards that you will build into your city and the value printed on them. So that's this right here, this little coin icon in the sort of middle right. Second, you can achieve these events, which are worth the points printed on there. And third, these prosperity cards, which are purple and have this flower icon on them, they give you bonus points at the end of the game. So this one is worth 2 points for each building or critter in your city with this icon on it. And the 4th place is these tokens right here. So you can earn these during the game, doing different things, and those are worth points at the end. So you'll total up your points, the opponent totals up their points, whoever has more wins. There are some tiebreakers, and I'll talk about that later. Okay, so that's how you win. How does the game progress? How do you play through these seasons? So you'll alternate taking turns. The starting player at each season is shown on the left of these icons. So in winter, the hare starts first, and then the tortoise starts first in the spring, and then back to the hare, then back to the tortoise. On your turn, you'll do one of three different actions. You can either place a worker, and you can place workers anywhere there is a paw print icon. This is a traditional worker placement game, so if a worker is present on a location, then no further workers can be placed there until this worker is removed. So if you place your worker, you will get whatever benefit is shown on that location, and then you will move the sun marker one space down the track. So the sun and moon will move across here, and the season ends when they both reach this far end. But back to the turn, so you can place a worker and move the sun. You can play a card, either from the meadow or from your hand, by paying their cost. We'll talk about that in a second. And then you move the moon. If you play a card, you move the moon one space to the right. Or your third option is to take a card, either from the top of the deck or from somewhere in the meadow, and add it to your hand. If you do that, then you can choose whether you're going to move the sun or the moon. So in any case, the sun or the moon is moving across. Once both of them reach the end here, the season ends, and you move to the next season. There's a little bit of cleanup, and we'll cover that in a moment. Let's talk through each individual action a little more. So on your turn, when you are placing a worker, generally you'll either be gathering resources from the locations down here, or achieving events for points on these locations up here. These four are called farm spaces, and that's important because sometimes there will be icons that show that you can do something with a farm space. So that's one of these four, and does not include these. These are river spaces. The river spaces are going to change out at the end of each season, and we'll get to that when I talk about cleanup. So up here with the events, in order to place your worker up here, you have to meet whatever requirements are shown on the events. For example, in this one, you have to have 2 prosperity cards in your city. Or this one, you just have to have more critter and occupation tokens than your opponent, with a minimum of 5 total. You do have to have one of each. You can't have 5 critters and no occupation tokens, for example. So if you meet the requirements there, you may place your worker, achieve that event, and receive whatever benefit is shown beside that. There are not requirements for these spaces down here, except that they must be open. So if a worker is already there, too bad. You have to wait for them to move before you can play on that spot. All right, let's talk about playing cards. So you can play cards either from your hand or the meadow. If playing from your hand, you just pay the cost of the card, which is shown in the upper left, place the card in your city, and move the moon that way. When you play a card to your city, it may have an immediate effect, or it may have an effect that is ongoing or end of game. Usually that's determined by the type of card. There are 5 types of cards that are the different icons here. So you have production cards, which are green and have this leaf symbol. Those will activate immediately when you play them, then at the beginning of spring and at the beginning of autumn. So that's a good way to build up an engine to generate resources. Usually that's what the production cards do. Then you have traveler cards. These are one-time effects. When you play them in your city, immediately they will give you something. You have governance cards. Governance cards have usually some sort of ongoing effect that triggers based on something else happening in the game. When you play a critter, when you draw a card, then you get to do something else. So they add on to your actions. There are prosperity cards. Prosperity cards usually score at the end of the game. They give you bonus points. Then lastly, you have destination cards. Destination cards don't give you anything immediately when you play them in your city, but it opens up a new location to play. You'll notice that this icon is the same as the worker spaces on the board. On future turns, you may place your worker here instead of on one of the spaces on the board, and you get whatever the card says. The catch to that is if you play in an opponent's city, they gain 1 gold from the bank, which is a victory point at the end. Now, playing from your hand is very straightforward. Playing from the meadow has a couple more restrictions. One more restriction. You can only play cards that are touching either the sun or the moon, or both. So in this setup right here, you could only play these 6 cards from the meadow. To play them from the meadow, it's the same as playing them from your hand. You just pay the cost in the upper left, pick it up, put it in your city. The same types of effects trigger when you do that. When you play a card from the meadow, it does get replaced as soon as you resolve the effects of that card. The third action that you can do on your turn is to pick a card, and that card could be from the top of the deck, so you just take one, add it to your hand. Or you pick one from the meadow. It's a good way to stop your opponents from getting cards that they might need, or if it's crucial to your strategy, you see something you want to use, don't want to wait for the sun or moon to move to it, you can pick it up. And again, it is replaced just like if you were playing it to your city. But in this case, you just add it to your hand. Those are all shown on your reference card, those 3 actions available to you. The fourth thing shown, which is not an action, so it doesn't end your turn, you can use this as much as you want at any time on your turn. It does say at any time. We've only played it on your turn, but you may discard 2 cards from your hand, discard face down, perpendicular to the draw deck. When you do that, you may take 1 of any resource, which is this icon here. So let's say I wanted a berry for that. One more way to play cards from either your hand or the meadow is through occupation tokens. So if I have this mine, for example, in my city, because it is a production card and it is a construction, it has this building icon to the left of the production icon, I may use a production token if I have one. I can't just take it from the bank. You have to earn them through spaces like this one or through various cards. But if I have an occupation token, instead of paying the cost for a critter, I may play a critter for free as long as it matches the color of the building, of the construction that it goes on. So in this case, they're both production, and it does not work in reverse. You can't put the occupation token on a critter to play a construction. You can think of it like the building is housing this critter, and now the building is occupied, so the door is closed, and you can't use it again. You may have only 1 occupation token per color, so you can't reuse the same building or even a different building of the same color to pay for more critters. So at most, you will have 5 occupation tokens, 1 for each card color and type. All right, let's talk through what happens at the end of a season, and then we will walk through a sort of sample turn. So at the end of the season, let's say the sun is there and the other player takes their turn, the moon moves here, the end of their turn. So now winter has ended. You can remove this winter token from the play space. Then you will look at the next one, which is spring. So it shows that one, at the very top, the first thing, remove the river tokens from there and draw 2 new ones. Those will be available for this season. Next, the tortoise activates all green cards that are in their city. So if I have this mine in my city, which produced a stone when I first played it, it will now produce another stone. Okay, and then the hare gets to activate all of their green cards, as well as picking a card from the deck. The sun and moon token move back to the beginning of the track, retrieve all of your workers. If they are out, they all come back between seasons. And then the tortoise starts the next round. So let's play through a handful of turns here, and I'm gonna play with the hands face up, so you can see what's going on. And I'm just gonna play for both players. So get some cards. That's our starting hand. All right, put that back. All right, so the hare starts at the beginning of winter and draws a card, picks a card from the deck, goes into hand, and I just realized you cannot see my hand. So you know what? We'll back this out just a little. We'll build our cities on the sides here, and then I'll show my hands like this. So the hare picked a card. The tortoise picks a card from the deck, but also picks a card from the meadow. And let's see, usually early on getting some green cards is good, so let's say the tortoise picks that one right there, which does get replenished. All right, the hare player starts. Since they have no resources, they might want to build this mine right here. That's a decent one. Generates some stone. So let's say they go right here, which will give 2 stone and an amber. Add that to their pile. Move the sun token here. Then it is the tortoise player's turn. Tortoise player similarly likes this resin refinery that they have in their hand, so they're going to try to get a stone. Doesn't look like there's a lot open that has stone as an option, but this one has a one of any. So they collect a card, add it to hand, and then they'll take a stone. Move the sun back to the hare. So the hare now has enough, and they're going to play this mine in their city. So they pay a wood and an amber. They gain a stone immediately. They move the moon because they played a card. Back to the tortoise player. Tortoise player is going to collect instead of playing the resin refinery yet, they're eyeballing this harbor. They like that long term. They're gonna pick that card. So they pick it, add it to their hand. This gets replenished, and they're going to choose which one to move because it's the third option, picking a card. So they're going to move the sun, move it a little further. Back to the hare. The hare is going to go here to pick from the meadow and get an occupation token. Okay, the hare wants this discount in the future. I'm going to go for that. And that was part of this action here. It lets you pick one from the meadow and gain an occupation token. That was a worker placement action, so move the sun back to the tortoise, who has quite a few cards in hand now. So they could discard some things to get more resources, but they're gonna do one more here on the board first. They're gonna go, let's see, they need 2 amber, they have a stone, they need some wood. They'll go to this one. Okay, we'll take 2 amber and a berry and move the sun. Now, you'll notice there's still one worker left for each player, but the sun can only move one more space, and that's because the tortoise earlier on moved it when they picked a card. So it's back to the hare. If the hare wants to make use of this worker, they should probably do it right now. They have enough to play the locomotive though, so they're going to give up that opportunity. They're going to play the locomotive, pay its cost, and move the moon. Now the tortoise sees this advantage, goes ahead, uses their last worker here to gain some wood and move the sun. So now no more worker actions can be taken. Instead, only playing cards or picking cards can happen. So back to the hare. The hare is going to use this occupation token, place it on a production construction to play. You know what? I think we've demonstrated playing from hand. Let's play from the meadow. There is this baker right here that they can play. Because it's touching the moon, they do not have to pay for it because it is a critter that matches the construction. Normally it would cost 3 berries, but no cost this time. So now immediately, and up to 2 times, can pay berries for 1 of any resource and to gain a coin. Unfortunately, the hare was racing and did not plan ahead, so they have no resources available to do this trade-in. But they played a card, so they moved the moon back to the tortoise, who now has enough resources to finally get something in their city. So 2 wood, 2 amber, and a stone. Build a harbor, which immediately lets the tortoise gain 2 different resources that are shown here. So the tortoise is going to take a stone and a berry. Well, he'll do that. Alright. Move the moon. Back to the hare. The hare has no resources. You can't play any cards because of that. So they are going to just pick a card, in this case from the deck, and move the moon. Back to the tortoise for the final turn of this season. The tortoise will play a resin refinery. Costs 1 stone. Gains a resin, moves the moon, and the season is over. So the winter tile goes away. Everyone retrieves their workers. The sun and moon move back to the beginning. The river tiles go away. Get 2 new river tiles. And both players activate, we'll start with the tortoise, all green cards in their city. So the tortoise gets a resin refinery and 2 different resources here. It's going to take a stone and a wood. Then over to the hare, who gets to both pick a card from the deck as well as activating the green cards city. So activate, get a stone, and once again the hare is out of luck. Doesn't have any berries to trade in for resources using the baker, but that would activate it this time normally. Now it's time for the next season, starting with the tortoise. At the end of autumn, this journey is awarded because there's no action space here. You can't claim that one. Until the end, it is automatically awarded to the player with more cards in their hand and their city than the other player. If it is tied, it just remains there. So at that point, you would count up your score. Whoever has more points wins. And that is how you play the competitive mode. Let's talk about the different modes of play now, because this is the base rules. This seems to be what it's geared towards primarily, but there are other modes listed in the rules. There's cooperative, and there's also the competitive, so 2. There's the campaign, and there are challenges. Having played through some of these, I haven't done a full campaign, but the cooperative version is really just you pick a page out of the campaign. So if you're doing the campaign, it uses this campaign book. There are 15 different chapters, they call them chapters in here, that all have unique goals and unique setups and things. And if you're playing the cooperative version, you just pick one of these and play it. If you're playing it as a campaign, you track how you're doing, and you play through all of them in order to see if you can beat a score at the end. where you get scored for each individual game that you play. So those are really very similar. The challenge is a bit different. Instead of working together to just meet a specific goal, for example, let me make this more concrete. So some goals. Here's an example goal. For chapter 8 in the campaign, have 3 different colors in the city in winter, achieve 2 events in spring, have 14 cards in the city in summer. One player has 6 cards in hand at the end of the game. One player has 6 resources left over at game end, and you have to have a final score of 75 or better for normal, or 90 or more if you're playing on a higher difficulty, on hard. Those are the types of goals that I'm talking about, instead of just reaching a point thing in addition to points, a point target. There are different victory conditions for that. Now, the challenges introduce restrictions on play but have a moving point target. So let's get set up for the campaign, and then we'll talk through how to do the challenges. Most of the setup for the campaign and the challenges, it's going to be the same. But flip the board over. Instead, you won't use the journey at all. It does not come into play in those. But you will still do the events the same way, where you separate the tiles into A, B, C, D, and E, along with the fair, shuffle them together, deal them out across the top. You will do the same thing with the meadow. You will put the cards in here. Also, you should consult the campaign book, because it may have specific setup guidelines depending on the chapter that you are doing. So this is just in general for most of the chapters. This is what you will do. Also flip these over so that the skunk side is up. There's a skunk in the upper right. Okay, draw 2 river tiles. And we'll say that we're doing the setup for chapter 1 because it doesn't have anything unique about the setup. The book will tell you what to do if there isn't a unique setup in other chapters. Now, for all of the challenges and the campaign, there is a skunk that is part of setup. The skunk is a reporter who is nosy and investigating the way that you are running your cities. So, and sort of getting in the way. The campaign book will tell you where to put the skunks. And so, for example, in this one, the setup shows none on the events. There are 2 in the meadow and 1 in the locations. I guess it's a reporter and her helpers or something. So you roll a die. It comes with a die. And for the meadow, we'll roll. We got a 5, so one of them goes on this 5 location. They are numbered on this board, on this side. Roll again, put the second one on 2. Okay, and then we roll for the locations, and it's a 5, so it's going to go there. Now, on the events and locations, the skunks block you from being able to play there, as if another player had already played. The skunks along this track here in the meadow, the sun and moon skip over them, so it reduces the number of turns available to you. So it'll be like that. Now, there is another token that's important, which is this one. This is the trading token. So in the campaign, because you're working cooperatively, and I'm going to use those 2 interchangeably, playing cooperatively, doing a single session, versus whether you're doing that or the campaign, it works the same way. So for either of those, you have this token, which If the chapter tells you that you can, this side is open sharing, which means you can trade resources with your partner uh, in a specific way. There are restrictions on it, so on your turn, you may place one resource or card or occupation token on this trading tile. Then at the start of their turn, they take what's on the tile into their resource pool. And they can do the same thing. They may place resources, cards, only one at a time on here, and then you'll get it on your turn. Now, some of them have it restricted here, and this is limited sharing. Limited sharing works such that you can only trade if the sun or moon are at this center location, this handshake sort of location that is this art is the same as it is on the board right there. So you can only trade them. And some of them also have no trading at all, so it's just gone. Then you don't put the token out at that point. Another thing that is a little different for cooperative is the good news. So you'll shuffle these and you will draw 3 when playing cooperatively at the beginning of the game. So the good news cards are one-time benefits that you can use. You can use them at any time. Either player can choose to use them as you're going, but once they're used up, they're gone. If you are playing the campaign, sorry, let me back up. If you're playing cooperative, you do this once. You get 1 card. The others go back in the deck. That's for you to use sometime during the game. Also, you get a single pocket watch to use during the game. The campaign book, depending on which chapter you're playing, may tell you to get additional pocket watches. The pocket watch, we'll talk about in a second, but it will let you move time back 1 turn. The good news, if you are playing on normal, will go with you from chapter to chapter as you're playing the campaign. If you're playing a single one-off cooperative, then it doesn't matter. Same with the pocket watches. You will gain 1 pocket watch every chapter, plus any pocket watches that the scenarios tell you to gain as you're playing through in the campaign. Pocket watches also carry over. They carry over both in easy and hard, but if you're playing on hard, you do not gain a pocket watch every chapter, only when it tells you to. And the good news cards, it's not such good news if you're playing on hard because they don't carry over. You can only have 1 at a time. The pocket watches, let's talk about those. Either player may use this. You flip it face down and you move either the sun or the moon back 1 space, essentially giving you 1 more turn to play. All right, something else that is different is this side of the tile. When you are preparing for season, there is no longer a divider here. You have to decide amongst yourselves how you want to divide up the benefits for the season. So this could mean 1 player, in this first instance, is picking a card from both the deck and the meadow, the other player's getting nothing, or you decide who gets a meadow card and who gets a card from the deck. Then this one, the green cards activating during spring and during autumn, you divide those up on a per building basis and decide which player is going to get one. So it doesn't have to be 1 player gets all of the resources, but you can play it that way if you want. I think that's everything for the campaign. So to play through a campaign, you take the campaign book. It has your goals listed there. As you achieve them, you'll use these little markers to show when you have achieved certain things, and you can just place them on the book to remind you that you've done them. At the beginning, it may be really obvious. So, for example, chapter 1 is achieve 4 events, which means 4 or more. So at any time, if you have achieved 4 or more events, you can just look in your city and see if you have them. But when you get to some of the later chapters, things like the tortoise has to play the doctor. So when you play the doctor card as the tortoise, you would take one of the event tokens. to remind you that you did that and you did accomplish that. Or there are some that are having a certain number of cards in hand. You just have to have those at some point during the game, unless it specifies at game end. One more thing that's different at the end of season, when you're playing cooperatively or in the campaign, is the skunks. They will move, so at the end of the season, they will stay within their rows, but you're going to re-roll for them. So number 4 and number 3, which is right there. If you roll the same number, they just go to the right, and there is an overflow. So for example, if 1 is there and I roll a 6, then this one's going to roll over to the other side of the board to number 1. And then this one, number 3. So they move at the end of each season. Each skunk moves. Now, the last thing for the campaign is actually tracking it and going from scenario to scenario. They include some score sheets that you can track your wins and losses on as you go through. And if you're playing and you lose a game, it doesn't mean that you lose the campaign. It does mean that you may have to replay it, and how many times you can replay depends on if you are playing on normal or hard, and I'll let you dive into that one on your own. Let's talk about the challenge mode. The challenge mode is set up the same way as the campaign. However, instead of using any of the specific setup directions for any of the chapters, set it up like you would for chapter 1, and instead of the skunks listed in the chapter 1 scenario, you will use a table in the rule book. So you can play on easy, normal, or hard, and it varies the number of skunks and what you can do during the game. So let's say we're playing on normal. So in this case, it has 1 skunk in the events, and in the challenge, you will start the skunk on whatever event is labeled A, and then they will roll to move in future rounds. And then there are 3 in the meadow and 2 in the locations. So we'll roll for these. So there's a 6, there's another 6, so it rolls around to 1, and there's a 5. And then there are 2 for locations, so there's a 2 and a 3. The skunks here work just like in the campaign. They block you on the event spaces, and the sun and moon will start a little later and end a little earlier because they're at the ends here, but they would skip over them. So the challenges work a little differently. Instead of just trying to achieve events or whatever the goals are that would be in the campaign chapters, you are playing against sort of a automata type opponent, and you are just trying to beat their score. So to start, they get 3 cards from the deck. That's what these red spots here are. They show which cards from the meadow the skunk player will take and add to their score. So if the arrow points up, which should be winter and summer, then at the end of those seasons, wherever there is a skunk, they will take the one that is up and to the right. So here, here, and for number 6, since there isn't one, they draw one from the deck. And they will add these to their city and to their score. Now the other 2, if it's pointing down, you might have guessed, that will be this card, and again, draw from the deck. So at the end of the challenge, there should be exactly 15 cards in the skunk's city. The skunk's points come from whatever is shown on those cards, plus some bonus for all prosperity cards that they have. Instead of getting the bonus listed on the card, they get the bonus listed based on your difficulty, which normal difficulty is 4 points per prosperity card. So they would get 2 for this, plus an additional 4 as a bonus for that one being a prosperity. once you've totaled up, there's other scores from the cards in their city, from prosperity bonuses, from events. They should not gain any coins during their play. But once you've totaled everything else up, depending on the difficulty, you add a flat score to it. So on normal, that's 20 points. Now, there are additional things in the challenge. So, for example, depending on which challenge you're doing, one of the 10 listed on the back. So the first one listed is no production cards in your city, which means that you cannot play any of these green leaf cards. Okay, I messed up one thing right here. In the campaign setup, you will place the skunk workers on the locations here, blocking you from using them. In the challenge, you will place the workers on the events themselves. So that is still available as a spot. If you can achieve this before the end of the season, you will take it away so that the skunk player can't achieve it. If you do not achieve this by the end of the season, then the skunk player will automatically achieve that event and score it at the end of the game. With the challenge, just like the campaign, you still draw 3 good news cards, choose one to keep, you still get a single pocket watch, and you just play through, try to beat their score. And it does have a little tracking sheet on the back of the rulebook so that you can log when you have successfully beaten each challenge on each difficulty. If you have any questions, please leave them down below. I will try to respond as quickly as I can. And I hope you enjoy Everdell Duo. If this has been helpful for you, please give a like and a subscribe. That would help us grow the channel. We'd really appreciate it. So thank you. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Scully. Touch.
Yeah, good job.
Good girl. Reyes.